audio. What's going on here? The audio break. Oh, it seems to be fine. Oh, that's broken. There we go. Alright, good morning. Alright, so done you. Alright, starting here, I guess. There we go. Make sure we pin that down. Good morning. Welcome back to school, right? I'm doing great. We are back to teaching today. So, school is in session starting at 10 a.m. Well, I teach at a university, so probably a little bit different situation, but I teach drawing at my school, so concept drawing specifically. And I'm sketching from Terryl Whitlatch's Science of Creature Design. So I've been doing this kind of as a morning study project, actually since the early September. And I've got just a few pages left in this book. Oh, okay, that's cool. I've taught at a few different art schools. I teach at Virginia Commonwealth University now in their communication arts department. But I've taught at a bunch of different schools, so. But that's where I'm at now, is here. Oh yeah? I teach concept drawing right now, and we're working on putting together an illustration track inside the major, which is kind of funny because apparently the major was originally intended to be an illustration major, basically, but they kind of tweaked it into, over the years, into kind of a blend of illustration, visual effects, and some graphic design. It seems a little kind of stretched out for me, but hopefully the next year or two we'll have a really good illustration track built in to that. Yeah, it's a lot of fun, and kind of nice to be able to hopefully have that kind of influence. I've definitely put forward, what I call my recommendation, and we'll see if they follow through on it. If not, or even if they do, I'm working on kind of building it out on my own teaching website, which I'm just kind of been focusing on again recently. So, yeah. But a great way of kind of self-studying prep is, if you're, especially if you're young, in high school. Well, at any age, really. I'm 46, so I guess any age will do. Let's see, I got that one already. So that might be good for this. Oh, maybe I'll work on this guy here. Oh yeah. What kind of projects are they doing in your school? I mean, I'm pretty strict too, but it's kind of within the concept art framework. Um, um, yeah, because being strict can be really good. It just depends on the quality of what that strictness is. But regardless, even if you're in whatever program you're in, it's always a good idea to be kind of pursuing, things that are of interest to you alongside, your schoolwork. A lot of times these days, well, it's been this way I think for a long time, but it's not so much these days. but you always want to have some kind of side thing going on in general, just as a overall principle, so that interesting. A custom folder. So like you have to decorate a folder or something like that. Let's see, it's you and you. Alright, you and you. So that leaves you and you and you and you and you and you. So maybe we'll just finish these ones up on this page and move on to the next page. Custom folder for your art, like a portfolio. Alright, let's see, this one's here. Oh, interesting. Yeah, one of the things that I didn't know until I really started teaching, because I just never paid attention to it, but art education majors, they don't tend to take a lot of art classes in college, at least. I don't know what they do after or before, but a lot of what their focus is on in school is like classroom management and lesson making and that kind of thing. So yeah, but that doesn't strike me as the most interesting project. Personally, yeah. Hey, Bosh. My dog decided to move over here. Guess he's realized I'm going to hang out over here for a bit, so. Yeah, well, yeah, it's a. Every place has got its own little quirks, right? Um, one of the things, it's always, like to point out. So even to my own students, I always recommend they always have their own projects going on as much as they can, and because you're always going to learn things on your own anyway. You can't really, that's how you really have to learn anyway. No matter how good your classroom is, even the best situation, you have to kind of develop your own interests and put them together. I've been teaching since 2004, just before I graduated from university. And so yeah, been at it for a very long time. Mostly, figure drawing, but illustration and painting and all that. And then at the school I'm at, I'm the professor of concept design, and yeah, yeah, it was 20 years this fall. So when I first got asked to start teaching, and I was quite surprised at the time, and was like, okay, I'll do that. And took a break for grad school and a 1 year break after leaving one other position. Yeah, so it's definitely been an interesting journey. The school I'm at now, it's a little bit different kind of position than I've had before, where it's pretty rare. It's a tenure track position at a big university, and so it's definitely a unique opportunity compared to other places I've been. I've taught at Ringling and SCAD and Pennsylvania College of Art and Design, at Kutztown, a couple schools out in Utah. That's good. I like to say people shouldn't go to university until their mid 20s. Go out and get some life experience and all of that. Um, and depending on where you can go, it can be depending on what you're looking at, can be relatively inexpensive. Relatively speaking. If you're trying to go to like a Ringling or a SCAD, that's very expensive. But a lot of like the state schools, depending on where you're at, can be quite affordable. I would always just pay attention to who you're going to be studying with at university. A lot of people, they don't necessarily need to go. I think it can be helpful. But yeah, it's expensive. I would assume Canada would all be free. I know there's that one art school up in Canada. What's it called? It's like a big animation school. And then there's another one, I think it's called Otis, I think, Academy. It's also really, really expensive. These private art schools. I see. Yeah, I mean, I've never been to Canada. I don't know exactly how it works. Obviously, but a good solution if you find it's too expensive is you can work and then take art classes from professionals at workshops or online mentorships because there's certainly a lot out there. The big hard part is this initial foundations, learning to draw and in the context of design. Um, so that's where the I think the hard part happens is those foundations, because there's a lot of stuff out there for kind of how to do finished work or 3D or whatever technique-y thing that people are using, how to paint with draw with Procreate or whatever. Um, but um, let's see. There we go. All right, let's see. This guy's over there. Yeah. Again, I would always pay attention to who. Yeah, this is from Tara Whitlatch's Science of Creature Design. It's the book I have up on the table, and she's drawing a Thorosaurus. So one of the one of the kind of study methods that's really helpful is just to copy other people's work. And a couple of years, well, more than a couple of years ago now, but a while back, I decided I wanted to start using all these art books I've bought over the years. Because you buy, I don't know about you, but I buy a lot of art books and have a large library of them. And one of the things that I want to do is just be able to take advantage of them. So I started doing a little copy project where basically I copy all the drawings and read the text and kind of do what they're doing in them as a way of learning some new things, improving my skills, seeing how other people see things. And so I started this one back in September. And I also wanted to, she doesn't ink the drawings at all. In hers, she photocopies them in or does it just as she copies them, or rather scans them, or she does photocopies and does like ink over them, or not ink, but marker or Photoshop coloring. It doesn't do any really extensive painting or texturing or anything like that. Yeah, so, but I have a bunch, just because I've been collecting them for a long time. But, so I started, doing copies from them, and as a way of, improving myself and, paying attention to things that I wanted to get better at or understand, at a deeper level. And so she's a really good example, Tara Whitlatch is, because she's not just a creature designer, but she's got a background in science as a biologist, and so she's like, she knows her animal anatomy and her musculature and her bones. She doesn't just make a monster. Her most famous creation probably comes from very early in her entertainment design career, and that's she designed Jar Jar Binks from the prequels. So that's when I first saw her work, was in the art of the Star Wars prequel books. She did a lot more than that in there, but that was kind of probably her most famous design is in there. But I also wanted to kind of practice some inking skills, so I kind of do a rough sketch and then I ink them with this particular pen nib, the Hunt 102, which is a pretty traditional pen nib for comic book artists. It's been around a long time. You know, it's been a popular nib. It has certain. It's very sharp and it's very flexible, so you can get some really nice line variation and control out of it, and detail. The Hunt 102. Yeah, so she's been around a long time. Yeah, so if you go up in like the art of, you know, the Phantom Menace from episode 1, you'll see a lot of her sketches in there. This is the I'll bring this over here real quick, but this is the book right here. So that's the page I'm sketching right now, and there's the Thorosaurus. Might be a little bit blurry if the camera doesn't autofocus, so it's kind of I have this telephoto lens. I actually wouldn't mind getting a longer one just so I could put it up a little bit higher, but yeah, you'll see her name in there, Terryl Whitlatch, Terryl, and then Whitlatch, Whitlatch, and she's in the art of prequel. So all the you know, the Phantom Menace, the Revenge of the Jedi, and then what was the one in the middle, Attack of the Clones. Yeah, everybody loves that stuff, right? I don't. I didn't like the prequels. I was in college when they were coming out, and they were. It was disappointing. But the art of books I really liked. You know, it's a lot for me, especially back then. It was like some of the earliest books you could get that showed the concept art in a film, and I was really interested in that. You know, for games and things like that, because I've worked, you know, at game studios before, like Disney Interactive and Riot and EA and a bunch of other places over the years. You know, as a freelancer mostly, and yeah, so I was excited for the movies to come out originally, and then but I didn't like them when they came out. Um, you know, which is not, you know, that's not a unique opinion, but but I wanted to like them a lot. But I really like the art books. So that was the same time Lord of the Rings was coming out, which has really good art books too. Yeah. So you go open up the Lord of the Rings. What's nice about the those old movies, or I guess old. I guess they're old now, but those movies from back then, is a lot of the concept art was actually done traditionally. So there's a lot of like gouache paintings and pencil drawings and watercolor and marker drawings and all that in there. So that's kind of an interesting example, and I've been seeing actually a bit more of that traditional work coming back to film. It's not doing especially well, but the newest kind of Lucasfilm stuff, that one with the kind of the Goonies, Star Wars they've been making recently, or putting out recently. There's like stop motion monsters in it. There's real painted matte paintings, so background images for outer space and other places, which is interesting. Went to Lightbox this fall, courtesy of my school, and saw Doug Chang, he's in the Star Wars books. He's been I think the chief creative officer for Lucasfilm for a long time now, in charge of the visuals and that. I don't much like what Disney's done with any of the new Star Wars, but apparently I'm not alone in that either. But he he commented in one of the presentations he gave that he likes to see like real physical sketchbooks from artists. He doesn't necessarily want to see that much digital work. He said because you can hide a lot in the digital. So he said like between AI and smoothing and other little cheap tricks you can do in Photoshop and other programs, he wants to see the physical sketchbook because he needs to see how you think. And if you're hiding all of that away in your other work, um, hmm. But I thought that was an interesting comment that he's because they have a lot of top level people working for them, and but I thought that was an interesting comment that he made about what he likes to see and why. All right, time to flip the page over. I've only got a couple pages left in this book. We're almost done. Let's see. I think it's a flip over. Yep. So there's the previous page. So, let's see. Done you, so I need to do you. And then these. So just skip that one. Alright. Don't need that standing one, right? Yeah, that's correct. But, yeah, so But I would say, if you're not getting to do all the things you want, but you want to practice, I would say that copy work is probably, let's see, let's get that in the right spot. Copy work's really, really helpful for learning. And people often ask, like, what to copy. And obviously, there's like old masters and traditional drawings and all that. But I always like to say it's usually better just to start with something that you like. And you keep a sketchbook, or there's different kinds of copies you can do. But copy work, I think, is a really, really helpful thing to do. A lot of people do kind of by default. Like I was copying comics and things, in the 90s. Jim Lee and J. Scott Campbell and Todd McFarlane, etc. Yeah, it's just like these days too, especially because you can see how people work. So you can go online on YouTube and you see how a living artist works today, and you can learn a lot from them. But drawing from life, keeping a sketchbook and just drawing everyday stuff around you is really helpful. And trying to make everything interesting. If you're interested in characters and that, draw a lot of people or creatures or environments. Draw and paint. Landscapes and people, and kind of just look for opportunities to practice. Let's see, 20 minutes left, huh? Yeah, so a lot of times you got to deal with the school stuff, and to a certain degree, if you want to look at like the history of the modern education system, school is actually designed to burn out your creativity. Like that's what it does. The model of schooling that we use, especially for primary and secondary school, so high school and elementary school and middle school and all that, it was actually designed to get rid of creativity. I'm sure the teachers don't think that these days, but that was the original intent of that model of schooling that we have, especially at the high school and elementary school level. It's called the Prussian model, and was developed in Prussia, which now we think of as Germany, was the Prussian Empire. And they ran into a little problem in the 1700s named Napoleon. And what they found was that when their soldiers in Prussia went up to fight Napoleon when he was invading that area, is that they ran for their lives because they did not want to die. They had self-preservation on the brain. And so they said, we've got to do something about that. And they came up with a public education system that was designed to make people more obedient. We kind of saw the effect of that when eventually World War II came around to Germany. And it wasn't the only reason that happened, but there's a whole bit of history there. But it certainly helped them be more compliant with being obedient. But in the 19th century, at least this is the American version of how this happened. It's probably similar to Canada to a certain degree, but because the system's used everywhere. But an American went over to Prussia having heard about this system of education because he believed that there should be kind of a multi-tiered education system, one for like the important people and then one for everybody else, because they were going into industrialization and they needed workers in factories to be obedient and hardworking and show up on time and do all the factory things that they have to get done. And so he went over to Prussia having heard about their system there, and brought it back to the United States. It's funny, he went actually during summer break, so he didn't actually see any of the classes in session. But he came and brought it back, and he's considered the father of the American public education system. And basically, he wanted a two-tiered system. He probably talks quite open about this back then when he was advocating for it. That that they needed a system that would get people to be obedient and show up on time and do their work and be happy with what they get and not try to extend themselves beyond that too much. Yeah, he even copied our language, eh? But but it's pretty. The system is used pretty universally worldwide. You can see more or less extreme versions of it. But there's statues. This guy named Horace Mann is the person who did this. There's statues to him because he created the public education system. And one of the things that they've found is that ever since it was put in place, is they can track a decrease in people's ability to read ever since then. So up until about, I think, just after World War I or at the beginning of World War II, the United States at least had something like a 90-some-odd% literacy rate. So people could read really, really well. And what they found tracking each of the new wars when they would bring soldiers in is a marked decrease in literacy from war to war or from period to period. So so if it was like 90%, as an example, just in general, I don't know what the exact numbers are off the top of my head, obviously, but after World War II, say it was at that 90 percentile area. By the Korean War, it was like 80%. And by Vietnam, it was something like 60%. And it hasn't gotten better. And keeps going down. And now schools are like a meal program for poor kids rather than an education source. And that's a real problem. It's like libraries aren't libraries anymore. They're activity centers. So that's kind of what the school system has been designed to do. Is basically make people not interested in things so that they're obedient and they pass the tests, but they don't really want people to be independent thinkers, to do things for themselves. They want people to be willing to give themselves up for whoever's in charge, and that can mean different things in different times, but that's the point of the system. And it may not be the point. Your teacher might not know any of this thought, but that's the whole foundation that the entire system was built on. Was this idea of this system that makes you obedient. That's why there's a factor. They call it the factory model of education. So basically, that's why you go from you'll spend in high school, a lot of times you'll spend an hour or maybe two in a single class, and then you move on to the next thing. And the idea is you're supposed to kind of absorb as much as you can, and then move along, just like at a factory, right? You do a certain amount of work, and then the thing moves along, and you're not really involved with the entire thing. You're just involved with your little chunk, and you kind of move through that process. And then they make us all pay for it. So obviously I went through all these schools as well. So as something to kind of think about, is that's what it's designed to do, is to make you not that interested in what you want to do, by having you do things that maybe aren't especially meaningful, but they get you the grade, right? They want you to make this folder that for kids or whatever, and that may not be like a direct part of that original program, but it's kind of an echo of it, that remains to this day. that's impacting your ability to develop creatively. How are we doing for time here? Anyway, 12 minutes left. All right, so maybe a couple more of these. Let's see. That was you. Just got upside down one over here. Maybe we'll ink these and see how we're doing for time. I try to limit this little copy project to about an hour in the morning. Classes don't start till 10 for me, which I think is a little bit late. I was told the reason for this is students have a hard time getting up in the morning, and I'm like, well, you just schedule the classes as you schedule them, and then students come or they don't. You don't set it up so for the least common denominator. You maybe set up for the average student or something like that, but I don't like this late start of classes in the morning. I'd rather I wouldn't mind starting at 8 o'clock or 8:30 in the morning, but I tend to get up pretty early. Well, that's weird. Yeah, that seems very chaotic, right? So that their times change. So like you're doing, you do 4 classes in a day, but they'll change the order those classes happen in. That seems complicated and weird. Smells like something a social engineer would come up with. Yeah, because I remember we take 4 to 5 classes in a semester in high school, if I recall correctly. So we get there classes start at 8:30 or something, and then I'd get there early. I usually do my homework while I'm sitting in the cafeteria or something like that. Yeah. Would the teachers want a longer lunch break or something? Huh. So a lot of that's someone going in there with a big idea about how they can fix things with a schedule change. which I don't think gets to the heart of where people have problems with education. But usually, someone who's got this big idea and they want to come in and they've got some kind of grant money or a research opportunity and they're hoping to show certain things with their numbers. Again, it's the factory model of education. And so, yeah, but almost done with this book. I've got like 4 pages left after this one. And I'm going to jump into figure drawing after that. So sometime during the week. So I want to practice more character design stuff. So I wanted to practice expressions. Yeah. It's nice to be somebody's guinea pig, right? So yeah, that's what I always say. You got to kind of take charge of your own education. Oops, I'm way off there. There we go. Put that in the right spot where I'm actually working here, huh? And you won't always know like the exact right thing you should be doing, but there's things that are, again, like generally good practices as an artist, like keeping a sketchbook, doing copy work, making your own stuff on your own time. And even if you get busy with the school, you just take a little break from it and then come and have a project ready to go when you're ready to get back to it again. So even if you have to deal with the system that you're stuck in, it gets over pretty quick, and it's such a small period of time, relative to everything else that you have potentially in front of you. So, as annoying as it is, I wouldn't let it define what happens as you go forward. Oh, we got a little spammer in there, huh? Consistent bot interaction. That's what everybody needs, right? It's more fake interaction, which is what they're promising us on social media, right? Instagram, Meta, like, hey, we're going to put a bunch of bots in your thing. And like, isn't that what we want to avoid, are bots? You know. Isn't that like, we want authentic interaction? Like, even if you're commercially focused, you need real customers with real credit cards and all of that. Yeah, I'd have to go over to my computer to do that. So I'm multi-streaming, and so like the chat's not. I'm not looking at the actual website. What's funny, it's just I'm kind of hyper aware that generally speaking, art streams aren't that popular anyway. Unless apparently it's a Bob Ross restream or some kind of VTuber, or whatever they're called. And let's see, that goes up there. And I'm dealing with my own problems at the university right now. We have some people in our department that are very excited about AI for artists, and I am not one of those people. And it's its own little battle I'm having to fight here, which I'm not really enjoying. Yeah, it's I see it as a fad. Like I see it as another bubble. It's gonna burst. And everyone else, not everyone, but like some people at the school seem to think it's the newest thing that's going to be the biggest thing ever, forever and ever and ever. And I have my doubts, um, and I'm more concerned about its harm to human creativity than even like a lot of the other issues around it. Because it teaches people not to value themselves, but to value kind of the volume of output that they can generate. And that's what people tend to think. Historically in movies, like you didn't really see AI, making a bunch of slop on, slop videos and paintings, and that you saw them maybe solving chemistry problems or engineering problems or something like that in the shows, right? If you're watching Star Trek or whatever, they would ask it, for information so they could solve a problem. But it was a problem that they defined, and all that jazz. And the fact is that it's not AI. It's a large language model system, so it's not actually artificial intelligence of any kind. It's just it's a marketing term that's being used, and a deceptive one at that. You can't even get AI from them, so they're starting to, some of these companies, because of the way it's being marketed, they're starting to say, oh yeah, we're going to get to real AI in the next year or so, and I just don't believe them. And then kind of as I've read up on it more and more, it's just that's not what these systems do. Like that's not what they're designed to do, or how they even function internally. It has nothing to do with how intelligence works. But the attitude of a lot of the people that I'm talking to that are for it, they see it as inevitable, which I don't think is true either, because it just requires vast amounts of power. And you see companies like Microsoft or Meta trying to get exclusive rights to nuclear power plants for their systems. And for example, like Microsoft wants to reopen 3 Mile Island nuclear facility, which is famous for its near meltdown, I think in the early 80s. So let's get that tail in there and that cape. But they wanted to power their AI systems. So you see things like that where it's just like, and then what's it going to do for you, really, right? Like they're like, what's it going to do? Well, you can make pictures with it, and it can write text and do these things. And it's like, well, I don't really need it to do any of those things. And if I can't be bothered to do it myself, why should anyone look at it? Yeah, well, some people say, that's when the simulation started, right? But yeah, for me, it's there's this psychological effect called the Dunning-Kruger effect, and the idea behind it is it's people's kind of estimations of their abilities to do things are often higher than their actual ability to do them. So like, I don't remember exactly when the study happened, but when they did it, they asked Americans what they thought of their ability to do math. And they rated themselves very highly. When in fact, the test scores in the United States, probably mine included, don't show that as being the fact. that shows them in fact not being very good at it. They did the same study in Japan, I think it was Japan anyway, and asked them what they thought of their own abilities. And they rated themselves very low, which of course is also false, right? We look at their studies, and relative to other countries, and especially the United States, they're actually quite high when you rate their ability. Yeah, it's related to the way they do teaching and things there, but and people's value for those things. But this is the Dunning-Kruger effect. And basically, there's 4 levels to it. So the bottom, there's this thing called unconscious incompetent, where it means like you're not very good at something and you don't know that you're not very good at it. And then as you kind of work your way up the scale, it's conscious incompetence. So suddenly, you're aware of your lack of ability, like there's something you want to improve, because you know that you're not good at something. So I know I'm not very good at basketball. Doesn't necessarily mean I want to improve it. I don't really care about it, but I know I'm not very good. I'm consciously incompetent. Maybe I could get good or decent at it, but probably not. And then there's conscious competence. That means where you're good at things, but you have to really think about them to do them. And so there's things that I like to do that maybe I'm not that great at, or I'm pretty good at, but I really have to spend a lot of time and energy thinking about doing those things. And then there's unconscious competence, which is where you're really, really good at something and you don't have to think about it. So someone who's like a genius or really, really experienced to such a degree that they don't have to, really plan too hard or think too hard about what they're doing. They just kind of do it with a lot of ease. And I think what AI stuff, what it does is it drives people to that bottom tier, to that nadir of unconscious incompetence, because it tricks people into believing that they're doing something creative when they are in fact not. They aren't doing anything at all. In fact, all they're really doing is harming their own ability to be creative. And it's been interesting when I talk to professionals, even other professors or artists. They'll always almost tell me 2 things about why we should be advocating for AI. And the first one is, it's more efficient. And in the sense that it gets the job done quicker than they can, and it can do a lot more of them. But that's not really, like a proper framing of what you're supposed to do when you're making art or doing design or any of those things. It's not about being efficient. It's about being effective. One good idea is worth more than 1,000 bad ideas. It's just it's a silly way of looking at the world or at anything. If our primary goal is just to output content, regardless of quality, we're going to end up with a whole lot of Michael Bay. Doesn't necessarily mean that working slow is going to get you something better, but you'll know what you're getting. So I just think that's a silly argument to make. If the argument for efficiency, when the argument is for effectiveness. And then the other one I'll hear from people is that it's more creative than they are, that it gives them ideas that they would not come up with on their own. And I just well, that's a you problem, not a me problem. I've got so many things that I want to do that I don't have the time for it, and I don't think that having AI do it for me is going to add anything to those things. In fact, it might just take away from it. But those are the 2 things I'll hear from people. They'll argue it's the efficiency side, and then they'll argue the I do 8 o'clock, huh? um, the the more creative side, and I'm just like, well, you're just saying that you're not really worth very much. You know, you're not very effective, and you're not very creative. So why should I even consider your opinion? You know, why is your voice even matter? You know, it doesn't matter to you apparently. Why should I care what you think? So, but that's kind of what I think when I see people talk about it, because I'll hear people be very pro on it. I'm like, and then as I listen, whatever, however they phrase those rationales, they always phrase them those two ways, and it's like, yeah, well, then why do I care? You don't seem to matter to yourself, so why should I? Why should you matter to me? And yeah, it's worth speaking of, it was very uncomfortable for me. We had a roundtable because of an incident at my school to talk about AI policy in the department, and and I think I was the only one that really had a position on it. Like, some people presented projects they were working on. One girl was just like, she was showing how kind of it doesn't work for scientific illustration because it doesn't know what it's looking at, so it can't use it. And my attitude is like, well, in that case, it can't really be used for anything because it doesn't know what it's doing. It doesn't understand what's happening, and you're just getting to a point where you're just accepting what you get, which is the other point I like to make, is that someone who's very experienced, they might get what they want from these systems initially. So someone who's like a very good artist, who has a long background in training and aesthetics and professional and personal experience with art making, like, they might be able to be very selective with the work, at least initially. But I think they'll get to a point where they won't be able to know if they are being selective, even if they think they are. They might say, well, I am being very, careful and judicious and selective, and, it's probably not true. Let's see, today's the 13th, right? Yep. 250113. We'll pick up there tomorrow, I think. But, so that's the quality of argument I see, and I'm just really shocked at how poor that level of thinking is. It'd be one thing if they were making an argument that made sense, or had some kind of unique point of view, but these are the arguments I see, and they're just not very good ones. I'm open to there being some kind of positive argument. And I haven't even gotten into all the copyright issues or the environmental concerns or a bunch of these other things. I'm just talking about the effect on an artist's ability to think for themselves, which I think is really important. And oh yeah, 13th is today, so first day of class is back for me. But yeah, thanks for coming in. I'm going to call it there for today, and we'll talk to everybody later.